Welcome to Feedback Friday. I'm your host, Jordan Harbinger. Today I'm here with Feedback Friday producer, my comrade in consultation, Gabriel Mizrahi. On the Jordan Harbinger Show, we decode the stories, secrets, and skills of the world's most brilliant people and turn their wisdom into practical advice that you can use to impact your own life and those around you. I think we should change brilliant to fascinating, Gabe. Some of the people that we talk to, they're fascinating. I don't know if they're brilliant. I'm not naming any names. But I'm just saying, maybe in the next copy we can...
perhaps referring to somebody whose episode is dropping this week, or... Okay,
No. This is completely unrelated, I promise. It's just that when I read that, I went, are they all brilliant? I don't know. Anyway, we turn their practical wisdom into advice that you can use to impact your own life and those around you. We want to help you see the matrix when it comes to how these amazing people think and behave. See, they're all amazing, but they're not necessarily all brilliant. That's my only qualm. Our mission is to help you become a better informed, more critical thinker so that you can get a deeper understanding of how the world works and make sense of what's really happening, even inside of your own mind. If you're new to this show, on Fridays, that's today, whatever day it is for you, it's still Friday for us, we give advice to you, we answer listener questions. The rest of the week, we have long-form interviews and conversations with a variety of, I won't say brilliant, but fascinating folks, from spies to CEOs, athletes to authors, thinkers, performers, for a selection of featured episodes to get you started with some of our favorite guests, popular topics. Go on over to jordanharbinger.com. We'll hook you right up. This week, we had Billy McFarland. If you haven't heard that name, I don't blame you, but he started Firefest, which was a total catastrophe. He did an interview with us. This was his first interview ever with any media of any kind from prison.
How did that line up? I can't imagine that was as easy as calling his publicist.
That was not, there is no publicist to be had. No, I got friends in low places, I think is the moral of that story. And I scooped the New York Times. We scooped, to be fair, the whole team was involved. We scooped the New York Times, Vanity Fair, and everyone else. We got him first. And it was fascinating. And he said some surprising things. I will leave it to you to listen to that episode released earlier this week. That's Billy McFarland. We also had Celeste Headley, who's a journalist over at NPR. She's an expert on conversation. I think she's great. She's absolutely brilliant. Now, that is a qualified brilliant right there. She's brilliant when it comes to having better and more productive conversations. You'll dig that one as well. I also write every so often on the blog, our latest piece, if you are too busy to respond, you are doing something wrong. It's all about the silly excuses people make for not being on top of their inboxes, their texts, their communications, and how not being responsive, not making everyday relationships a priority, how that can be, and most likely is, holding you back in some pretty major ways. Gabriel, I don't know about you. When I see somebody who has like 72 unread texts, I get... Is there a word for like anxiety that I catch contagiously by osmosis, by being near that person? I can't deal with that. That's my own stuff. I get it. But who has unread texts in that amount? You can't even, here's the thing. On the iPhone, you can't mark texts as unread. That just means they have never seen those texts. What? How are you surviving day to day? That's what I'm wondering.
You have digital anxiety by proxy, I believe, is probably the technical term for the horror that you're describing.
Yeah.
Seeing somebody's home screen. Yeah, it is
so
weird.
awful.
I don't know. If I saw that, I would probably freak out a little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, make sure you've had a look and a listen to all that. The articles are at jordanharbinger.com/articles. Podcasts are where you're listening right now. You can reach us Friday at jordanharbinger.com. If you want to write into Feedback Friday, please keep your emails as concise as you can. Try to include a descriptive subject line. That really makes our job a whole lot easier. If there's something you're going through, any big decision you're wrestling with, or maybe you need a new perspective on stuff, life, love, work, how to outrun the Eastern European mafia, whatever's got you staying up at night lately, hit us up Friday at jordanharbinger.com. We're here to help. We do keep every writer anonymous. Go figure. Some of these people's names that we say on the show, we just make them up. You could never tell. By the way, the weirdest thing happened to me this week. Gabriel, I know I called you about this, but I wanted to share it here on the show.
Oh, yeah. I want to understand this because it's still friggin' bizarre. I don't quite understand.
It was so weird. So I was I walk and read. So I read audiobooks, listen to audiobooks, and I was walking.
Nerd.
Nerd alert, yes. So I was walking around my neighborhood wearing like one of those Korean grandma hats that keep the sun off of you, which is I do.
A what?
You don't know about Korean grandma hats? They have like a
Not
face shield
specifically.
and a giant neck thing so that you don't get any sun on you. You
Oh,
haven't seen
kind of
these?
like, is it like a visor?
Huge brim, like
But
a
it's not a
gardener.
visor?
It's like
a
an old lady
double-
gardener brim. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I've
I
never
wear
heard
that
of it. It's
in a
great image.
landscaper shirt, which is like a really
course.
thick long sleeve shirt that's about bright yellow or as bright orange as you can get. So a lot of people think I'm like a landscaper, but I'm just a weirdo walking around the neighborhood reading books about finance.
Easy mistake to make.
Yeah, it really is, honestly. And so I dictate notes sometimes because it's easier to speak if I have like a longer sentence than just whipping out my phone and typing.
You definitely sound like a crazy person walking around your
walking around talking to myself while wearing a gardening outfit in the hot sun for miles at a time.
You are like a 5150, just walking down the street.
Yes. It is definitely awkward. So I'm dictating and normally it works fine. And this past a couple days ago, whatever it was, I'm dictating and I'm going like, okay, so in his office, I can't remember. What was I saying? Like in the office, they make sure that everyone has a chance to learn during the meetings or whatever thing I was trying to dictate into my notes for the show. And all this gibberish sentences kept going into the Google Doc. So I restart the Google Docs app. I turn off dictation, turn it back on. Doesn't help. Put my AirPods back, put them back on. Doesn't help. All this gibberish. And then I finally started reading, instead of just deleting the gibberish out of my notes, I started reading it. And I would say something like, this company's existed for 150 years. And what would get dictated into the Google Doc would be something like, I can hear you from inside the machine. And I was freaking
does that mean?
out. Yeah. First of all, what does that mean? Second of all, it happened over and over. I would delete that and then I'd go, no, this company is 150 years old. And it would say, I can barely hear you. Can you speak loudly? And then there'd be more gibberish. Like it wasn't exactly that sentence. And I would just say it again and again. And it would say something like, am I crazy or are you crazy? And I was just thinking like, I don't know the answer to that question. What's wrong with me? What's happening right now?
I'm sorry. This is the creepiest. I didn't quite understand what you were trying to tell me on the phone because I think you were so freaked out. I like couldn't quite understand what was happening. But like, this is like, what is this? Is this like an AI prank or is this like Google programmed some joke into like Easter egg into their AI software?
That had occurred to me. So I tried a different app. Same thing was happening. Then I was like, okay, the phone is messed up. Reboot the phone. No change. I was like, okay, this is bizarre. So I think, look, 2020 hindsight, what I think happened, because I don't believe in supernatural stuff or anything like that. I think I was using Bluetooth AirPods. It may be connected to multiple devices at once, and somebody inside their house was either messing with me or had a movie playing or was talking and also heard me talking to their computer or something like that, and they heard my voice coming. Like somewhere in my neighborhood, there's somebody going, no, I swear that the Bluetooth speaker was talking to me. I swear this happened.
Somebody else has a creepy story that
they were talking about meetings, and I was just like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And you know,
they're
because
like
it was that kind of
150
thing.
years. What does that mean?
Yeah, what is he trying to tell me? What is my Bluetooth pill speaker trying to tell me?
That's creepy, though.
It was something like that. Yeah. So but it gave me a kind of a perspective on mental illness because I really thought for a second. I go, okay, this is not a prank. This is definitely really happening, but is it though, or am I crazy? Like, am I having a weird hallucination in my neighborhood? So I stopped, I like took my sunglasses off, I'm rubbing my eyes, I'm looking around, I'm taking a deep breath. I called you because I was like, okay, am I being weird right now? Like, am I talking funny? What's happening? Because if I called you and you were like, hey, are you okay? You sound weird, you're slurring. And I'm like, I'm fine. Then I would realize it was me. Yeah. But I just couldn't find the explanation for it. And so it gave me kind of a bit of compassion for mental illness. And then also, if you look for an explanation and you convince yourself that something is true, you can find patterns and things that aren't really there. And this is called patternicity. Michael Shermer talked about it on the show a long time ago. We're going to bring that episode out of the vault, but it's called patternicity. And it has to do with the fact that humans look for patterns in anything. And I went back to the Google Doc and I looked at some of the things that I dictated because I stopped deleting them after a while. And it didn't exactly say, with no extraneous words, I can hear you from inside the machine. It said things like, hello, who, what? Okay, I can hear you inside the machine. And then something else, right? With maybe another word thrown in there. But all I read was, I can hear you from inside the machine, which obviously scared the living daylights out of me. Right. So that was the kind of thing that I went, wait a minute. Okay, I'm actually convincing myself more that this is happening. It also reminded me, the third bullet here, it reminded me of the Mark Edwards episode from a couple weeks ago where he's doing fake psychic readings and he's saying, oh, everyone thinks you're really caring. Also, you have an adventure in your future. And everyone's like, adventure? Well, that's in the future. I can't disprove that. Ooh, you have a lot of animals in your house. And they're like, I don't really have any animals. But my friends do think I'm a caring person. And you forget about the stuff that's wrong. And you look at the stuff that actually matches what you want to believe about yourself. Since I didn't think I was crazy, and since I was looking for a pattern, I saw that something was happening, but then I eventually figured out, okay, this has to be the technology issue. And I ended up resetting the AirPods and walking away from that area, and it went away, and they're fine, and it's never happened again. But it got me thinking, like, our brains are so good at tricking us. Even when there isn't anything there, your brain is going to go, wait, I got to make sense of all this data. Right. And it will make sense of the data, even if there's no sense to be had.
Even if there's not data points supporting that. Yeah, you'll just ignore the ones and take the ones you do want, or that your brain wants. That's interesting. Yeah, I get it.
So that was an interesting sort of segue.
If that happened to me, I would have freaked out, man.
I mean, I was a little nervous. First, I was just pissed because I was like, oh, it's so frustrating that my dictation's not working. And then I started reading it and I was like, okay, what is happening?
But like, I can deal with somebody being like, what? Sorry, didn't catch that. But somebody being like, I'm speaking to you from inside the machine.
The call is coming from inside the house, right? Yeah, that's what it was. It was like, what the hell? At first it was an inconvenience. But then as soon as my brain saw the pattern kind of arise out of it, that's when I was looking around like, good thing it's not dark outside.
Right. You're like, I'm not in an anime after all.
Exactly. Yeah. Scream 7. Also, in a brief announcement, I have a course on how to do a podcast interview. A lot of people ask me for this. It's out right now. Some of you probably found it already because I mentioned it casually in a couple earlier episodes and on social media. It's available at jordanharbinger.com/how-to-interview, no spaces. You can also go to jordanharbinger.com/how-to-interview to buy. I did it in concert with Himalaya, and it's affordable. I think it's like $40. I haven't checked the price recently. I know it's going to go up and down with sales, but it's very affordable. It's literally like under $50. It might even be under $40. That's jordanharbinger.com/how-to-interview, and it's all my super cool secrets of experience over time. It's not what microphone to buy. It's literally like how to research and conduct an interview for podcasting. You don't need it if you're trying to get a job interview or do anything like that. It is for content creators, and it's something I did with Himalaya. Gabe, what's the first thing out of the mailbag?
Hey, gang. I have a 5-year-old and my brother has a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old. We want my dad, who's a great-grandpa, to spend as much time with them as possible. The problem is, my father has terrible hygiene. My dad will go number 2 and not wash his hands.
Gross.
We don't hear water and the sink is dry. We live far away as well, so he has to stay for days when he comes to visit. He showers on average once every 3 days.
Oh, wait, hold on. Plot twist. Maybe he doesn't even wipe. Clean hands. Never mind. The odds of that, slim.
I don't know, man.
How can you not wipe? You have to. Yeah, there's no bidet. They would have mentioned a bidet.
I want to live in a world where this guy's dad wipes. That's what I want to live in.
But just doesn't wash his hands afterwards.
That's just me. I'm just I'm an optimist. Whatever. We've mentioned it before. We've gotten angry. We've joked about it. We place hand sanitizer around the house for hints. We remind him that fresh towels are in the bathroom. We've even embarrassed him. But nothing changes. He reaches his hands in the chip bag.
No.
Obviously, those are his now.
Totally. Good way of keeping the chips to yourself.
Our kids ask for food and he tries to feed them. We sprint across the room to stop him.
Gross.
I cringe when he holds the new baby. We don't want to offend him, but we need better hygiene. It makes all visits a complete stress fest. Our kids are now becoming scared to touch grandpa. Are we overreacting here? I think you already know the answer to that.
Yeah.
If not, how do we address this? And what if nothing changes? Signed, Dealing with Dad's Dastardly Dishevelment.
Wow, nice one. Man, this first question stinks, huh, Gabriel?
Oh, man, that was low-hanging fruit, but it was the correct fruit.
Yes. Look, this email, that joke was cringe, but this email makes me really cringe, especially as a dad of a toddler, as you could tell by that dad joke a minute ago. Look, right now, especially not washing your hands bad in general, but not washing your hands when the Rona could be crawling all over them, literal nightmare. Yeah, this is a problem. And the sad part is your dad is great at being a grandfather. He is not some curmudgeonly wanker you have to deal with who happens to smell like a UFC fighter's jockstrap. That would be so much easier.
That would be easier.
That would be easier.
Yeah.
If this guy's sweet, you want him around, he's making it very difficult. Look, on the bright side, your kids' immune systems are going to be super strong, but really, really nasty. That is so gross. And it's dangerous. Look, this is tough. Because my advice would have been to bring it up with him directly, crack a few jokes so he doesn't feel embarrassed, hope that he gets it, ratchet it up a little bit, maybe put some social pressure on and embarrass him. You've already tried that and he still won't change. You put towels by the fridge as a reminder. There's Purell in his underwear drawer. I mean, he's just not taking the hint. So, look, you could keep a bunch of Clorox wipes around the house if you can find some. I haven't been able to find any since we thought Kim Jong-un was temporarily dead back in like April.
That is the last time we heard about Clorox wipes.
Yeah, they're just gone.
Yeah,
you can't get
them.
them.
Entire aisle full of Rite Aid is just empty. Yeah.
I feel like you got to physically wipe down your dad's hands before he reaches into the bag of Sun Chips, but you can't be everywhere at once. And I'm not sure that's even practical at all. I can imagine, Gabe, this person just getting PTSD when they hear the chip bag crinkle because they're like, there's dad ruining the snack item. What is it? What bag can I not touch now?
35 years later, they can't open up a bag of Pringles.
Yeah, somebody opens up some Fritos and they're like, ooh, I got to take a shower. It's a thing. Sorry, it's a thing. I got to do it. So to answer your question, are we overreacting here? Definitely not. I don't think it's crazy to expect Grandpa to wash his gross, gross hands before he holds little Cody and digs into your bag of Skinny Pop. There's a freaking pandemic going on. This would be important in normal times. During COVID, non-negotiable. We know this virus is transmitted through the mouth and nose and eyes, often via people's hands. So no, you're not being Howard Hughes over here. You're being totally responsible, reasonable. The one upside, though, is, like I said, your kids are going to have super strong immune systems. They are going to be immune to a lot of stuff that comes their way, but maybe don't get them super sick with E. coli and other gross things. I'm surprised your dad doesn't get sick all the time. I guess he's probably gone through it already.
This guy went through the pandemic of 1918 and he made it.
Yeah.
He's probably just made of stronger stuff.
It's like, I was in the Korean War. We didn't have Purell.
Exactly.
So how do you address this? I would have one more conversation where you really lay it out there. Tell him your concerns bluntly. Explain why this is so important. Blame it on COVID if it helps. Maybe taking the attention off of him and onto the virus will help. In this conversation, I would lay out the consequences if he doesn't change. Tell him, if you don't start washing your hands and taking showers, we can't have you over and you can't play with the kids. It's not a punishment. It's a health thing. Also, make him understand why you are so concerned. Tell him how poor personal hygiene, especially in older people, can lead to all sorts of serious outcomes. Skin infections, bacterial and fungal infestations, which is gross. Gastroenteritis could happen. And how it can lead to other conditions like septicemia, which is blood poisoning, basically. Tell him you are asking to improve his hygiene for his own benefit as well as for his kids and grandkids. Don't make it about you. Make it about him and the grandkids. And if he doesn't care about himself, make it about the grandkids. Really give it one more shot so that you did everything you could to help your dad understand that this is a problem before you make a more drastic decision. If nothing changes, though, then you got to make a decision that works for you. Maybe he can only come over for a day, not for days at a time, if that's even possible, if he lives close enough. Maybe he has to stay at a motel nearby, one with lots of soap that he won't ever use. Maybe he can't directly interact with your kids. He just can't be around them without you guys there to wipe his hands down. This will come down to your standards and values as a parent, and every parent is different. I know this just from my own prefs here. You'll have to weigh keeping your kids safe against giving them the joy of hanging out with grandpa. But like I said, there are objective health concerns at play here. The hardest part will probably be hurting his feelings and depriving him of time with his grandchildren. But that is something you can tell him as well. I really don't want to keep you away from them, but if you don't wash your hands, this is going to become a problem. Gabe, any other thoughts here?
Well, no, I think that's really fair advice. I do wonder, though, if his age is playing a role here. Did you think about this just as an older man? Like, the letter didn't say whether this hygiene thing was a new problem or it always been a thing with him. But if it is a new thing, and I kind of get the sense that it is, then there might be a little bit of cause for concern. Older people, they do tend to fall off sometimes in their hygiene. For a few reasons. One common one is dulling senses in general. A lot of the time, like they just can't see or smell if it's time to change clothes or take a shower. I think that's called nose blindness, if I remember.
Interesting. I've never thought about that. That's so true, though.
Another one, and the one that I'm wondering about, is depression. Depression, by the way, that can be harder to spot in older people because the signs of depression, like fatigue or irritability or lack of interest,
describes all old people, pretty much. Not all, many old people.
It can look a lot like getting older in general, and there are other reasons for poor hygiene as well. There's a desire for control and people being afraid or uncomfortable around having to have someone make them bathe. I mean, it's awkward, right? And there's always like cognitive impairment like dementia, but I don't know if that's going on. I think we would have heard about it. But depression and cognitive impairment, those are the two things that I would look out for with your dad. What seems to you like a lack of interest in just staying clean, it could just be that, but it also could be a sign of something else worth finding out. The conditions that cause cognitive impairment, they do come with other behavioral changes, sensitivity to stimuli or a struggle to keep track of time. And if you put all those things together, you can start to understand why somebody of his age wouldn't, cozy up with some Old Spice. So I'm thinking, has he seen a doctor recently? Maybe you should take him to his primary care physician and tell him what you're noticing. A PCP could give him a basic cognitive assessment, order some labs, and maybe get a picture of how your dad is doing in general. And if he needs more attention, then you can take him to a neurologist or possibly a psychiatrist if you notice any mood-related changes. That'll tell you more about what's going on with him and hopefully get your dad the help he needs if he needs it.
Aging parents, man, you don't think it'll happen to you until it does. It makes me think about how I tell my dad that he needs to sing the happy birthday song twice through while he washes his hands before holding Jaden. Awkward. But also a good reminder that it's something we just got to do for our parents at some point. My dad, though, he's a bathroom door handle toucher. Like, he'll wash his hands, flick the water off in a public restroom, and then just go and touch the gross handle. And then he's like, all right, let's go eat some pizza. And I'm like, you, sir, are not touching anything that's going anywhere near me.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Their generation, they're made of different stuff. He's made it this long. He's probably fine. But you and I, after COVID, there's no way we're pulling
No way. But I was also never, I remember being like 4 and my dad would touch the handle and I go, Dad, the handle's yucky. And he'd be like, whatever. And I'm like, nope, I was right. As like a 4-year-old, I was like, you are gross.
No, but you were also a non-door handle toucher famously for years. I remember when we both walked out of the one at Podcast One and we both took our paper towels with us from the dispenser to the door, and there was not a trash can by the door, and we were like, what kind of people are they catering to?
Yeah, we're just I'm throwing it on the floor.
Then you become that guy.
Floor.
That's which is not fair to anybody, but it's what has to be done.
What am I going to do? Put it in my pocket? No, absolutely not. And you can't walk. You walk into the office like, hey, is there a garbage can for this paper towel that I definitely took from the men's room because I'm the non-door handle? Now, though, I have no shame. I'm like, look, what? Somebody throw this away. Give me a garbage can. I'm not touching the handle. Jeez,
such
disgusting.
Rock star behavior.
Fucking diva now. Absolutely. I had to open my own door, okay? This place has gone downhill.
Just throw it in the director's face of the podcast.
Yeah, the producer, here, eat this. Oh, my God. All right, what's next?
Oh, man. Okay. Hi, Jordan. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 10 years right out of college and would like to find a career to ease into over the next decade. My husband and I will be empty nesters in our early 40s and plan to be financially free before then. My husband is starting to show some signs of a neurodegenerative disease, and depending on how quickly things progress, there may come a time soon when he won't be able to be the breadwinner. So it's my turn to start bringing in an income, preferably part-time.
That terrifies me, actually. As a 40-year-old now, I'm like, oh my God, we're not invincible. The feeling of invincibility you have in your 20s and early 30s goes away, and then it is quickly replaced by not only am I not invincible, but life is really fragile, especially now. Some of that's COVID, but the fact that like people my age are getting neurodegenerative diseases is absolutely terrifying. Unbelievable. Sorry to hear this. Anyway, continue.
I've always been interested in becoming a mental health therapist, but that would require quite a big investment of time and money. My therapist suggested I look into becoming a life coach because of the flexibility with where and when to work, and I'd be able to help people with wellness instead of things like trauma. I'm hesitant to pursue this path because it feels like it might be too much of a hustle, but the other issue is that I want to be legitimate and well qualified for whatever I do. I do not want to feel like an imposter. I don't want to tell people I can help them and then not really be able to help them. If I do go the life coach route, are there any well-respected programs or schools you would recommend? Do you have any advice for someone thinking about becoming a life coach? Or do you think I should run the other direction and do something like HR, which is another career option that sounds interesting to me, but wouldn't require that huge initial investment to get started? Signed, Taking the Lie Out of Life Coach.
Okay, so look, I know I make fun of life coaches a lot here on the show, but to be fair, they're kind of an easy target. There are just too many of them these days, especially the ones you see promoting themselves on Instagram, social media. People who woke up one day on their mom's couch half the time, not knowing what they wanted to do, and they thought, hey, why don't I tell other people what to do? Which I find a little suspicious at best. A good rule of thumb for finding a coach is, have they succeeded at something other than coaching before they became a coach? It doesn't have to be the thing that you want to do. There are plenty of coaches that are great tennis coaches that never won the French Open, but have they succeeded at anything other than coaching? Sports coaching may be the difference here, Gabriel, I think, because there are world-class coaches that just have a proven track record that you can measure. Like, he's got 3 Super Bowls. He's a good coach, right? Yeah, but life coaches, or financial coaches, it's like, I'm not so sure about this. Is being a coach their only real qualification? I'm not saying 100% of coaches need to live up to that standard. I'm sure that there are some incredible coaches who found their calling early on and are fantastic at what they do. But that does weed out a lot of the people who just did an online certification course from their childhood bedroom and started telling people they met at the gym how to curate their life because they couldn't cut it in retail or whatever. Unfortunately, life coaching is an industry with little/really no oversight, loose standards, if any standards at all, which invites a lot of questionable folks peddling questionable ideas that are rooted in pseudoscience. They have no performance background whatsoever. Like you said, most of the time, it's just too much of a hustle. But all right, let's talk about you. I gotta say, I love the way that you are approaching this question. You're not one of the people I was just talking about. You actually want to be of value. You actually want to be qualified. You don't just think you are already because of your life experience or something. You actually want to make a difference. You don't want to be a bullshit artist walking your clients through some manifestation exercise you learned 20 minutes ago on Tumblr. I admire that. I really do. And I'm very sorry to hear about your husband, by the way. Like I said, that's horrible. I'm sure it puts a lot of pressure on you to make the right choice here. For what it's worth, you sound like a responsible and thoughtful person. These are 2 qualities that will serve you very well in whatever you choose to do. So here's my advice on becoming a life coach, so to speak. If you feel called to that kind of work, I think you should explore it. But do a lot of homework before you dive in. First, do some research on how the best life coaches out there have trained. I'm talking like the top 5-10% of coaches. Do they have a degree in psychology, social work? Did they get certified at the same 1 or 2 institutes? Did they go to some kind of self-directed research? Do they have additional training in organizational leadership, performance science, conflict resolution, mediation, meditation, anything like that? I don't know. Do they have their own coach? Try to piece together a common curriculum from the people who are doing the best version of what you want to do. And don't believe the hype on social media, right? There's a lot of people that have like 200,000 followers and they're like, I'm a life coach. Really? Did they just buy followers? Do they write for a blog like Forbes or Entrepreneur where you get the little blue check mark and now you're thinking, oh, they're doing so many great things. How do you know? How do you know that they are? How do you know they're even successful? Or are they just selling coaching courses? Don't work with those people. See if you can replicate the successful people in your own way, what they are doing in your own way. I actually don't even know which life coaching programs are supposed to be good. I'm sure you could Google your way to that answer pretty easily. My only advice there is this, just as I said earlier, do not follow the marketing. Don't follow Google ads. Don't follow sponsored posts. Look for the programs that get mentioned organically or that show up in people's bios a lot. Even many of those are going to end up being scams, frankly. Do your homework on those programs. Read up on their alumni. Testimonials, which are often fake, by the way. Their ratings, their press, reviews can be faked. Anything can be a scam, but life coaching is much more rife with scams than most other places. Any kind of coaching these days is very trendy. Don't take anyone's word for it. Really do your due diligence before handing over your money to any of these places. The next thing I would do is find out what being a life coach really actually means. Reach out to a handful of working life coaches. I say working because way too many of these types of people, they spend their days bullet journaling and drinking $8 matcha lattes at a vegan cafe, probably near Gabe's house. Somewhere. Get to know them. Ask if you can book 15 minutes with them by phone and find out what the day-to-day of this job is really like. Don't fall for their like, oh, I need to get an assessment going and no, just find out what the day-to-day of the job is really like. And if you can shadow somebody for a day or two, then great. Tell them you're not in the market to become one of their clients. You are trying to become a coach yourself. Many of them will turn you down, and that's fine. How long does it take to build up a successful practice? If things went well, would you enjoy seeing 4, 6 clients a day? Are you willing to spend the rest of your time attracting new clients and selling? Can you realistically become financially free by being a part-time life coach? We'll get into what these people get paid later. What hourly rate will you have to hit in order to make enough money? And what exactly do you want to specialize in? Is it work, dating, spirituality, aging, wellness? Do you want to focus on individuals, executives, companies? Do you want to do the marketing work to build your practice around that specialty? Because you're definitely going to have to do that. That's going to be the majority of what you do, probably. Will you need an LLC or a business type of insurance? You're going to have to do a lot of work around the actual coaching. So it's important to know what that really entails and if you're up to the task. And this is not unique to life coaching, by the way. This is true of every single job that seems interesting. There is always a huge part of it that just sucks or is not sort of inside the core. It's important to know what that is before you're in too deep. This show has tons of marketing and finance and negotiation, and I've got to do this and that and manage this and that and these people and these teams. It's not just read books, talk to smart people. I've designed it so that's the majority of my time, but it certainly isn't all of it. I spent years coaching and consulting, and I spent so much more time on admin, lead generation, sales than I ever did on actual coaching. I had to hire coaches to coach because I was the only one who could do lead gen, sales, admin. By the time I had enough resources to scale, I was so sick of coaching. I'm telling you, true story. Also, you're going to spend a ton of time finding clients, closing clients, a ton of time trying to convince those leads you're not like the other 10,000 life coaches that came up on Google when they were searching. Then you got to collect their money. You got to chase them. That's the problem in an industry with no certification, no barrier to entry, and that is filled to the brim with con men and 20-somethings, which the life coaching industry really is. Con men and 20-somethings that just don't want to get jobs. They're hustling on the internet. You might not want to play that game. I know I sure don't. I would also get clear on what qualities a good life coach needs to have. Gabe, I don't know. Do you want to take it from here? I feel like you're pretty good at this kind of stuff.
Well, I just want to say that I agree with everything you've just shared, Jordan, but this woman does seem particularly thoughtful, as you pointed out. And if she did decide to go down this path, I'm pretty confident she would not be like any of these other people that
No, she won't.
Yeah, no, I don't think you think so either, but I just want to be super clear because the upside to having an industry that's filled with a bunch of, as you put it, con men and questionable folks is that the ones who are actually good really do rise to the top. It might take a shit ton of marketing to get noticed and to get to that point, but people are so desperate for good life coaching that the really, really good ones do stand out. So that's something to keep in mind alongside this. But as for the qualities, in my view, a great coach has to genuinely love watching other people succeed. They have to be empathic toward other people. They have to be super invested in their struggles, their successes. They have to be patient. They have to be willing to help somebody work through a difficult challenge and not just want to solve that problem for them or, rush them through the solution. In many ways, the relationship is similar to that of a therapist and a patient, but the rules are much fuzzier. That goes to the lack of regulations that you were talking about, which is fair. I mean, it's a different industry, but there's more emphasis on work and end results. And are those the qualities that you already have, or are they qualities that you'd like to develop? I think that's a good question. Is that a relationship you would enjoy having with people most of the time? That's another good question. If you do decide to pursue this kind of work, then I would recommend trying it out for a few months. Here's an idea. You could approach 2 or 3 people and tell them, I'm thinking about becoming a life coach. I want to learn more about the role. Would you be interested in having me coach you for free for 3 months, let's say? And they would basically get free coaching, which is great. And you would get a sort of low pressure internship. It's a win-win. And then coach them for a few months and see what happens. And that'll teach you the most you can learn about the coaching dynamic, what people actually need from their coach, what you need to develop, where you need to develop as a coach. Or it'll teach you that you really don't like this kind of work at all and that it's not for you, in which case you can pursue another path like HR and you can know that you made the right choice. But basically, I think what Jordan and I are trying to tell you is that you want to make sure that you will enjoy this work and that you can actually help people in a meaningful way. And I know that that's what you want to do too. Like you said, you want to be legit. You said you want to be well qualified. You don't want to feel like an imposter. I really admire that. But to do that, you have to be willing to put in a ton of work. And that basically means doing, the basic training that every life coach goes through, for sure. But it also means deepening your knowledge around psychology and health and wellness and becoming more curious and more empathetic and more informed, and basically just developing your capacity for close relationships with your clients and putting in hours and hours to get good as a coach. So you have to constantly be a student, I think, to want to thrive at that kind of work and to always be learning about what makes people tick and how to make them better. So if you really love it, and if you could see yourself being super committed to it, and you do think that you can be truly useful, then I think you could be a great life coach. But those are the questions that you have to answer.
By the way, I want to, before we wrap this one, I do want to go over the average annual earnings according to pay scale. This should dissuade you and everyone else from becoming a life coach. Okay. California, $35,650. New York, $37,000, roughly. Colorado, $50,000. I guess life coaches are more in demand in Colorado. There's probably less of them, so they have more clients. Alaska, $60,000. Tennessee, $23,000, $24,000, basically. The moral, move to Alaska if you want to become a life coach, unless you want to drive for Lyft to bolster your salary and pay for that Audible subscription. So it's not super lucrative. This is not something, you'll be better off going to school and becoming an actual therapist, in my opinion. I don't want to slam life coaches too much, but it's not a great gig, generally speaking, for most people. All right, Gabe, what's next?
Hey, J-Team. One of my friends in my friend group is an extremely difficult and sometimes rude person. She lacks basic social skills and will often ramble about her interests in a condescending manner as though her opinions are the only ones that matter. She also frequently talks much too loudly, even when my friends and I repeatedly ask her to quiet down, and generally doesn't seem to have much of a regard for our comfort levels or what's appropriate. It's gotten to the point where other friends in the group have expressed that they don't want to hang out with her anymore and have even started excluding her from group invites unbeknownst to her. I feel like it's only a matter of time before she realizes that she's being excluded and that most people in the group feel negatively about her. Although the easy answer would be to cut her out of the friend group, it isn't that simple. Most of us have known her since kindergarten, that's almost 20 years, and don't intend on losing her as a friend. We're also the only friends that she has, so cutting her off would likely devastate her. I want to talk to her about being more conscientious, but I don't know how to go about it. I worry that if I say something, I'll only hurt her and make her feel unwanted. Even worse, she suffers from anxiety and depression, so I also worry that it would only trigger a breakdown. How do I tell someone, hey, all of your friends find you insufferable and want you to completely change without completely ruining her? Signed, tethered, tired, and terrified.
Oof, the yikes, this is pretty bad. Wait a minute, Gabe, is this one about me? Be honest.
Yeah, I wrote into the Feedback Friday inbox hoping that you would see this letter. Mm-hmm. That's what I did. Yeah.
Yikes. Well, all right, look, I can totally relate.
Sorry, Jordan, can you just keep it down just a little bit? Your voice is
sorry, I know.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm pretty loud. That actually is true.
Not self-aware at all.
I used to get in trouble in kindergarten because I talked a lot, but all the kids would talk. It's just that my voice would carry the whole classroom all the way down the hall and be like, Jordan's so loud. Or it was more like Jordan's the only one talking. I was like, no, I'm just louder than everyone else combined.
Yeah, you picked the right profession. I
guess so. I guess so. Could have been an auctioneer. I can relate to this. Look, I've had a couple friends like this over the years, no names mentioned, and it's always incredibly awkward. Do I say something? Do I not say something? If I do say something, will I be helping them or am I humiliating them? Is that even my job? It can be pretty confusing. I'm really sorry that you've been put in this spot. And based on your description, your friend has a lot of stuff she needs to work on, not just with her social skills, but with her mood, personality. I wouldn't be surprised in the least if these two things were actually related, but that's between her and her therapist, maybe her life coach, if she hires the woman from the previous letter. If you love your friend as much as I think you do, you said you've been friends for 20 years and that you guys are pretty tight. If you really are that close, I think you actually owe this conversation to her. Sometimes we're afraid to hurt people we love by telling them the truth. But then when we withhold the truth from them, we're not really loving them, right? We're sort of doing what's easiest for us. It's not our job to make our friends feel amazing and validated all of the time. It is our job to make them feel understood and supported, which sometimes means helping them acknowledge something they might not want to acknowledge, even if it's super uncomfortable, even if it's pretty scary for both of you. But like you said, you don't want to hurt her unnecessarily. So here is how I would approach this conversation. I'd invite her over to your house or invite yourself over to her house. Carve out a couple hours to talk. I recommend having this conversation at home because it might get a little intense. You don't want to make her cry into her poke bowl or whatever in public. Is it poke bowl or poke bowl? There's a little thing over the E, right? There's a little accent over the E.
I've been saying pokey for like 10 years, but I recently found out that it's poke-bowl, like as in like okay, like rhymes
like
with
Pokemon,
okay.
right?
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna say it like that.
Whatever. I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna go straight pokey forever. Pokey for life.
There it is.
You can become. Poke's growing on me already. You can begin by telling her how much you love her, how happy you are that you're still friends after all these years, how you hope you can still be friends for a long time. Tell her that you asked to hang out because you wanted to share a few things that you'd noticed, stuff you think would be helpful for you both to talk out. You can even say, this is really hard for me to talk about because a big part of me feels like I might hurt your feelings here, and I don't want to make you feel anxious or depressed or anything like that. But then I think, if the positions were reversed, I would want to hear it. So that's why I wanted to make some time for us. I would just take a minute to set the stage like that so she doesn't feel ambushed or misunderstood in some way. Then, once you've laid the groundwork, you're going to get into specific behaviors that you mentioned. This is definitely going to be the hardest part for you, by the way. I would rehearse this in your head a couple times in advance. I would start by saying something like, I've noticed a few things that keep coming up when we're all together, and I just wanted to share them with you because I think they might be coming across very differently from how you intend them. That is really important, by the way. Don't ascribe intention or motivation to these behaviors. You want to decouple what she's doing from whom she is fundamentally as a person. Does that make sense, Gabe? Like you don't want the behavior to be, you are this way. It's like this thing you do sometimes that you should change. That's the difference. That'll make it a lot easier for you to say, and it'll also make it a lot easier for her to hear. Then you go through the behaviors. Tell her that you notice she rambles about her interests, that she sometimes comes across as being more knowledgeable or more important than the people she's talking to. That does sound irritating. And then when she shares her opinions, sometimes it sounds like she thinks her position is the only one that really matters. Tell her that you notice that she talks very loudly when you get together. Guilty as charged. I can relate to that. That even when you guys ask her to be more conscientious, she just won't listen. Keep it all brief. Definitely make it specific. So you want to say stuff like, hey, remember when we went to the Griddle and Jess was talking about starting that marketing agency with her friend from college, and you said marketing was a bullshit job and working with people is a terrible idea, and then Shay said lower your voice, and then the family next to us stared at us while they ate their waffles, that kind of thing. You want to get down to it. You want her to be able to recognize the behavior in specific moments. Because if you just say, you've been like so annoying lately, that doesn't mean anything. She can't change anything. She's just going to think you're crying at her, and it's not going to be fun for either of you, and it's not going to change anything. Like I said, this is going to be very challenging. You can write this all down. It's not weird if you do that. You're probably going to feel like you're hurting her when you bring this up, by the way, just by pointing out the obvious. And in a way, you are. She might even have an emotional reaction while you're talking, but you have to be willing to tolerate those feelings back from her in order to have this conversation. So try and say all this in a kind voice, in a gentle voice. Resist the temptation to get angry or judgy or unnecessarily harsh. Make an effort to tell her all of this from a place of love and concern for her rather than judgment or condemnation. Then talk to her about how this behavior is affecting all you guys. Help her understand how all of this is starting to push you away. And look, when she goes on and on about her opinions and you guys feel like there isn't much room for your own thoughts, let her know that. Tell her when she talks really loudly, it makes all of you uncomfortable, and that when she refuses to lower her voice, it makes you feel like she just doesn't care about your comfort level, and it's starting to make you guys want to spend less time together because she doesn't seem to want a respectful two-way relationship with you. And this is really key, not just calling out what she's doing, but helping her see the impact and what it is on you, because she can deny that she's being annoying or doing any of that stuff or talking too loud. She can do that all she wants. But what she can't do is deny your experience of that behavior. And that's a good technique in general, by the way. If you think someone is going to get defensive during a conflict, you can share your experience of them instead of attacking their behavior directly. Finally, once you've laid all that out, invite her to talk. Ask her what her experience has been like. Ask her how she feels about the group these days, if she's picked up on any of this. Let her explain her behavior, process what you're saying, have whatever reaction she has. Let her get mad, let her get sad, let her get embarrassed, let her get scared. That's all part of this as well. Support her through these feelings. Don't reject her for having them. Try to make this a conversation as much as possible rather than a lecture just from you. Now, if she gets super defensive about all this, if she's like, screw you, Emily, you have no right to call me self-absorbed, I'm just doing me, and if you don't like it, you can screw the hell off. Look, if she does that, calmly help her see that that is part of what you were talking about. You know, you can say, listen, I can see this is really hard to hear. I totally understand that. It would be hard for me too, but as your friend, I have to point out that the way you are reacting right now is exactly what I am talking about. Keep supporting her, keep helping her get out of her own way. If you do that enough times, she'll run out of defenses and be forced to confront what you're saying. Or, you know, she won't. That's also possible. She might be so defended that nothing gets through. And then you just got to decide at that point whether to keep her as a friend or move on. You don't have to cut her out of your life forever. Maybe take a bit of a break or something like that. Gabe, do you think she should involve the other girls? Is there an intervention? Is it one-on-one? Does she say, hey, other people agree with me? Or is it just, this is my experience?
I think that could actually work really nicely as long as they don't create the feeling that they're ganging up on her.
That's what I was worried about. Yeah, like everyone hates you now. You know, okay.
But that could cut both ways. She might feel ganged up on, but if it goes well, she could also feel like, oh, I really have to pay attention if all of them are saying this at the same time, right? So I think it kind of comes down to the group dynamic and how they can make that work. I got the sense from this letter that she had a little bit of a special relationship with this person. So like they too were closer maybe than the rest of them were with her. So that made me think that maybe it should be a one-on-one conversation. But if the group is super tight and you guys are all part of this, then yeah, maybe consider doing it as a group. That's a really good idea.
And if you do decide to part ways with her, I think that's completely fair. You've done your part to help her. If she absolutely refuses to engage, she just refuses to consider her behavior in a new way, she's made her decision. It's extremely hard to be close with somebody like that, even if you do have a deep history. Maybe she'll come around later. Maybe she never will. Maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know. Who knows? Honestly,
that's a good point. It could be Maybelline.
It could be. Really good, in fact, it usually is from my experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, this situation is kind of sad. Here's a woman who's dealing with anxiety and depression, who's clinging to her friend group since kindergarten because I can't believe that just came out of the 90s into my brain. Is that a TV ad, Gabe?
Yeah, I think
it had to be, right?
Yeah,
that's like something that was on
makeup.
during.
Isn't it makeup? Or is it hair?
Or hair stuff, maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure now. Maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. That was something that was on like during TGIF. I was probably watching Steve Urkel and Full House, and then those would pop on.
Although why they would be advertising that against Steve Urkel is a bit of a mystery.
Yeah,
it's makeup. It's makeup.
It's makeup. Okay, good. Yeah. Good. I can go on with my life now. Mm-hmm. So look, this is a little bit sad, right? Here's a woman who's dealing with anxiety, depression. She's clinging to her friend group since kindergarten because she probably struggles to build relationships with new people, candidly. And she seems like she's on the verge of a little bit of a mini breakdown at any given moment by your letter here. That's a lot to deal with. She definitely needs some help, and from you as her friend for sure, but also from a professional. Maybe that's something you could recommend to her too. And that's a great reason to go into therapy, right? My friends can't deal with me and now they're leaving me behind. Why? What am I doing? Nip this in the bud. She can be salvaged, right, if she wants to be. If she admits that this is a problem, she doesn't know what to do, she's going to see a professional, then yeah, don't cut her out. She's trying. That would be the beginning of a really important conversation for her if you have this. And she is lucky to have you as a friend. I wish you the best. I hope you help her get better so that she can keep you in her life. All right, last but not least.
Hey, Jordan, I've had a Robinhood account for about 5 years and have used it to invest in stocks and options.
Robinhood, by the way, for those of you who don't know, it lets you invest in stocks, ETFs, options, cryptocurrency with no fees. Very popular service / app right now. It's kind of like an online bank.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 weeks ago, I signed up for Robinhood's cash management feature, which sends you a debit card so that you can access the cash in your account. Days after signing up for it, a hacker gained access to my account, sold my $6,000 worth of stocks and options,
Wow.
then transferred the cash to the debit card that had not yet arrived to me, all in 5 minutes. I notified Robinhood within an hour of this happening. 2 weeks have passed, and even though I've emailed them for updates every few days, Robinhood's customer service sends me generic responses that don't really tell me if my funds will be returned or when my account will be unrestricted. I cannot make any trades or withdrawals until this is resolved. So my questions for you are, is there anything I can do in the meantime to help ensure that my funds will be returned to me? Is Robinhood responsible for returning the stocks and options that were sold without my authorization, or just responsible for returning the funds that were stolen? If they are only responsible for returning the funds, then what are the tax implications of the gains from the unauthorized trades? It doesn't seem fair that I might be on the hook for them. And if Robinhood does not return my funds, do I have any legal recourse that I can pursue? Signed, Robin Hoodwinked.
Nice. Well, I'm very sorry to hear this happen to you. As someone who thought his phone was being hacked into by Scarlett Johansson from the movie Her, I know how gross it is to feel like someone's all up in your stuff, stolen a significant amount of money from you on top of it. Look, you're not alone here. Robinhood hacks have been in the news a lot lately. In fact, a couple weeks ago, Bloomberg ran an article, which we'll link in the show notes, about a bunch of people who are in your exact same situation. Their Robinhood accounts were liquidated, a huge headache trying to get Robinhood to make them whole. By the way, I actually kind of dig Robinhood. It's a great idea. I think they're a company that's trying pretty hard right now, so I don't want this to be like slamming on them. I also wanted to give you some solid advice here, so I consulted with Corbin Payne, defense attorney and good friend of the show. I also called up Robinhood to run your situation by them, anonymously, of course, and I got an interesting response from them as well. And before I dive in, just a quick disclaimer. As you know, I'm a lawyer. I am not your lawyer, but in this case, I'm stepping even further outside of my tiny, tiny legal wheelhouse. So as I share my thoughts, please keep in mind that I'm just looking at the plain language in the Robinhood customer agreement where applicable. I am not offering you a super deep or sophisticated legal argument. Anything I say should be interpreted in that light. If you need further counsel, I highly recommend hiring a lawyer with very specific expertise in consumer financial products and in the laws that govern your state, especially since the Robinhood agreement has several jurisdiction clauses in there because they operate all over the country. All right. Starting with your main question, is there anything I can do to help ensure that my funds will be returned to me? Well, I went looking at the latest Robinhood customer agreement, revised June 22nd, 2020, and in subsection 1 of Appendix A, I went deep, it provides that they will reimburse you if you think your card or PIN has been lost or stolen, or if you believe that an electronic fund transfer has been made without your permission, and you can lose no more than $50. There is a caveat here, though. You have to let them know within 2 business days of finding out about the theft. If you wait longer than 2 days, Robinhood's share of the liability may be lowered and you could lose as much as $500. Since you notified Robinhood within, an hour or so of finding out about the theft, you should get most of your money back, less that $50. In fact, they'll probably give it all back because, I don't know, Gabe, there's something like super cheap about them being like, well, by law, we're allowed to keep 50 of these dollars. It's just kind of crappy customer service. Credit card companies are the same. They just give you all your money back. They don't keep the $50. At the same time, Robinhood is within its rights to take some time to conduct an investigation to ensure that that fraud actually did occur. But after a reasonable period, a week, 10 days, whatever, which is actually Robinhood's policy, after that, they need to either pay up or demand further documentation from you about what happened. If Robinhood is not responding reasonably to your case, if they're just completely out of order here, then you should consider escalating this within the company. Ask to speak with the fraud department. Demand to speak to supervisors. If that doesn't work, demand to speak to legal. That should get their attention. If you do escalate this all the way to legal on the phone, I recommend that you write a certified letter to the legal department, basically just restating what has been discussed with legal during that call. That way, if they don't bother to respond to this certified letter, they don't get to come back later and say, oh, that wasn't our position. You misunderstood. They can't do that because you summarized their position as you understood it, put it in a certified letter, and then they got it and you have proof that they did. If they respond with some different reason, that becomes your proof that the company won't pony up in violation of law, honestly. Either way, you need to start building a case for yourself. Keep good documentation of all your emails, phone calls, and all other communication with Robinhood or any bank where this happens. Track the timeline of your case and how it's unfolding day to day. Basically, create a super clear and detailed record of this whole experience. This will be a huge asset to you no matter what you do. If Robinhood doesn't return your funds, then yeah, you have other avenues to pursue. The next step is to gear up for making a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau complaint. Robinhood has an SEC probe going on right now over some other questionable practices, so this might be a good time to bring a complaint like this. If you do file a complaint with the CFPB, then include a copy of all that documentation so they can really understand your case. We'll link to the CFPB's complaint page in the show notes here as well. Another option available to you is the Consumer Fraud Division in your state. A state entity conducting an investigation into an out-of-state bank can get tricky, but it would be worth bringing this issue to your state's attention. If nothing else, the state could impact Robinhood's ability to do business in that state if it turns out that they're systematically failing to respond to cases like yours. They have to respond. A third option is to just report this to the police. This might not do anything, probably won't result in any action. It might even be redundant if you do everything else we just mentioned, but it could come in handy for tax purposes. I'll come back to that in a second. If all else fails, consider taking legal action. Now, look, I realize the amount of money in question here is probably going to be less than what you'd spend on a lawyer. It's certainly less than what your time is worth. So you're going to have to make that call. My hope is that you can lean on Robinhood hard enough to get them to resolve this for you. But taking legal action, that can sometimes be a great way to affect change if nothing else will. Maybe all you need is a strong letter from an attorney to force them to pay attention to you in the first place. Now, is Robinhood responsible for returning the stocks and options that were sold without your authorization, or just responsible for returning the funds that were stolen? That's a good question for Robinhood. I'm fairly sure they're only on the hook for returning the stolen funds. If they refund your $6,000, they're not also going to refund you some additional amount in the form of stocks or options. They're not going to try and repurchase securities for you instead of giving you cash. I would imagine it's just like getting reimbursed by an insurance company after an earthquake. They don't go, sorry, your vase broke. Here's some money and also another vase from someone else's grandma. With the right, with the money you recover, you can simply buy the stocks and the options again. Although I recognize the price might have changed since this all happened, which brings us to your last question. Will you be on the hook tax-wise for gains from these unauthorized trades? Well, we consulted a tax attorney on this question too, and the answer is, of course, it depends. Since the hackers stole your assets, you might be able to claim a deduction for theft loss. Your CPA, whoever does your taxes, they're going to know about that. However, if Robinhood does end up reimbursing you, then that could offset the losses. It might even create a gain. And I think that's what you're worried about. In that case, you could be looking at what is called a personal casualty gain. That means any gain from an involuntary conversion theft of your property arising from a theft. But there are caveats here too. The property in question cannot be connected with a trade, business, or transaction entered into for profit, which unfortunately might include your stocks and options. So it's tricky. You need someone who can figure this out for you at the time, depending on what Robinhood does. Since there are so many specific limitations around these deductions, you just got to do your homework. Make sure your accountant is well versed in the latest regs. They probably should be. To save you a little time, we'll link to the relevant theft and casualty loss statutes, the IRS publications, the tax form for you. That's all in the show notes. You're welcome. According to the attorney we consulted, his name is Nathan Perry, by the way, the most important thing is to report your case to the police and document it so that if the IRS ever comes about asking about the deduction, you got some proof. Again, document, document, document. Like I said, we called Robinhood to talk about your case, and a Robinhood spokesperson said that whenever they are made aware of account issues, they work directly with customers to resolve any issues as quickly as possible. In other words, they are not going to tell me what was going on with your case. They told me a lot of things. I'm going to skip to the highlights here. Whenever a customer reports fraudulent debit card account activity, they investigate and determine whether there is fraud within 10 business days. And if they need more time, they'll provide you, the consumer, with provisional credit for the full disputed amount. They should be giving you their freaking money back, your money back, that is. Have they done that? If they haven't, escalate. For debit card transactions, they will finalize their investigation within 90 days from the time you reported the fraud to them. So they have more time, but they should be giving you a provisional credit here. What was described was not stemming from a breach of Robinhood's system, so they didn't get hacked. It may be related to an overall increase in targeted cybercrime against users of financial products. A lot of people are having this happen to them, and it's not like they went in and stole the data. They got your password somehow. Who knows? Because of this increase in cybercrime, this week, in an effort to help consumers continue to protect their accounts, Robinhood has rolled out all these different communications, including two-factor authentication, which you should be definitely using on anything important. That's where they text you, and they text you a code to log into things like LinkedIn or whatever. They're trying to verify personal information. They're encouraging strong password practices. Don't use the same password everywhere. We've talked about that a million times. Robinhood is working on their communication. They're working on customer service. They doubled the size of their customer support team this year. So they're really working at this. I think they're overwhelmed. I actually like Robinhood for what it's worth. Like I said, they're getting hit hard by cyber lately. I think it's growing pains from what's essentially a modern bank. I think they'll eventually do right by you as they're insured. They want to keep their customers, perhaps even more than most big banks. They probably care about you more than most commercial banks. So sit tight, escalate if you need to, circle back if you need to. I think they've got you on this. Hope you all enjoyed that. I want to thank everyone that wrote in this week. Stay tuned after the show if you want to hear a bit more about the course I just released on how to conduct interviews for podcasts. Go back and check out the guests from this week, Billy McFarland of Firefest, the infamous Firefest, and Celeste Headley of NPR if you haven't yet. If you want to know how I managed to book all these great people and manage my relationships, it's about systems, consistency, tiny habits. Check out our 6-minute networking course, which is free, over on the Thinkific platform at jordanharbinger.com/course. Don't kick the can down the road. Don't try and do it later. Dig the well before you get thirsty. I see a lot of people making this mistake, and I see a lot in the inbox. Oh, I didn't dig the well. Now what? Start over. Start fresh. No shortcuts. The drills take a few minutes a day. Ignore it at your own peril, frankly. It's free. It's over at jordanharbinger.com/course. A link to the show notes for the episode can be found at jordanharbinger.com. Transcripts are in the show notes. There's a video of this Feedback Friday episode on our YouTube channel at jordanharbinger.com/YouTube. I'm at Jordan Harbinger on both Twitter and Instagram. You can also hit me on LinkedIn. You can find Gabe on Twitter at Gabe Mizrahi or on Instagram at Gabriel Mizrahi. This show is created in association with Podcast One. My amazing team includes Jen Harbinger, Jay Sanderson, Robert Fogarty, Ian Baird, Millie Ocampo, Josh Ballard, and of course, Gabe Mizrahi. Keep sending in those questions to friday@jordanharbinger.com. Our advice and opinions and those of our guests are their own. And like I said, I'm a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. So do your own research before implementing anything you hear on this show. Remember, we rise by lifting others. So share the show with those you love. If you found this episode useful, please share it with somebody else who can use the advice we gave here today. In the meantime, do your best to apply what you hear on the show so you can live what you listen. And we'll see you next time.